One for the money, his gaze shifted downward, and one for what they really built this place for. Lena stared at him. What's down there? He swallowed hard, every muscle in his jaw tightening. The real asset. The hum sank into a low, seismic vibration that rippled through the chamber, rattling the crates, shaking loose frost, echoing with something that felt alive. Lena clutched the envelope in her trembling hand. Deep beneath the floor, something ancient and powerful stirred, waiting for her to open the next door, waiting for the one Harwood it recognized, and as the vault lights dimmed, then flickered back to life in a deep, warning gold, Lena realized the money wasn't the secret, the vault wasn't the treasure, and level 4 wasn't the end. It was only the beginning. The vibration rising from beneath the vault floor deepened until it became a physical pressure, an invisible weight settling across Lena's shoulders, across the crates, across the cold air itself. It felt like the earth under her boots was breathing, slow, heavy, ancient. The man braced himself against a steel column, eyes locked on the center of the vault floor where faint lines Lena hadn't noticed before, began to glow through the frost. Perfectly straight seams warming into visibility like veins beneath pale skin. The floor was not solid, it was a door, a second vault, a deeper level no blueprint had acknowledged. Lena's heartbeat thundered in her chest. Her father's name on the envelope felt like a brand against her palm. "What is down there?" she whispered. The man shook his head slowly, not in refusal but in fear. "I wasn't cleared for it," he said. "None of us were. We only knew the protocol. Guard level 4, seal if compromised, await extraction. We were told the asset was critical, but no details, no briefings, only that its existence never reaches daylight. And they left you here with it." As if the question pulled something out of him, the man's expression twisted, pain mixing with bitterness. "They didn't leave," he said. "They ran." The words hung in the frozen air like a verdict. A second clunk echoed beneath the floor, louder than before, metal colliding with metal in a motion too deliberate to be mechanical failure. The glow from the seams intensified, casting long, gold-lit shadows along the vault walls. Frost hissed as it melted in thin, steaming lines. The vault was warming. The lower chamber was activating. The envelope in Lena's hand felt heavier with every breath. She lifted it slowly, her fingers numb from cold and shock. A part of her wanted to open it immediately, to see her father's handwriting, to understand why a forgotten federal vault recognized her blood. But the floor shifted again, groaning softly, and the decision was stolen from her. A panel near the vault's rear wall flickered to life, an old monitor she hadn't noticed before, its thick glass trembling with static. Lines of distorted text stuttered across it before stabilizing into a single message. Level 4, inner seal disengaged, authorized lineage match. Harwood proceed to secondary lift, the man swore under his breath. "Secondary lift," he murmured. "I thought that was a rumor, a myth they used to scare us into following protocol." Lena's skin prickled. The lift meant there was another descent, another depth, another hidden layer beneath the vault of cash. The money wasn't the treasure, it was the camouflage, a lie wrapped in $100 bills. "What did they bury under this place?" she said. The man met her eyes, his voice low and bleak. "Something worth shutting down a whole airport, something worth erasing people, something worth freezing time for." Another seismic vibration rippled through the vault floor, this time lifting dust into the air as the glowing seams widened. The metal beneath began to shift, peeling apart in geometric precision as steam rose from the opening crevice. Lena took a step back. The floor was opening, the lift was rising, or worse, something was coming up. The man grabbed her arm, not with aggression, but with urgency. Listen to me. If you go down there, everything in your life changes. Whatever your father was part of, it led here, to this moment, to you." His grip tightened. "But you don't have to follow him." Lena stared down at the widening seam, at the faint golden glow rising from below, bathing her boots in trembling light. The air drifting up was not cold, it was warm, pulsing with regulated temperature, a controlled environment designed for preservation. Preservation of what? The second hum, deeper, slower, felt almost like a heartbeat, ancient, tethered to the machinery of the facility itself. She swallowed hard. "My father brought me here," she said quietly, even if he never spoke a word of it. The man's jaw tightened. "Then you need to understand one thing." He stepped closer, lowering his voice as the vault lights flickered. "Everything sealed underground is dangerous, not because of what it can do, but because of what people are willing to do for it." Before Lena could respond, the floor split fully, metal panels sliding apart in smooth, terrifying synchronization. A column of warm air surged upward, scattering frost and sending shimmering waves across the vault. At the center of the opening rose a platform, circular, reinforced, illuminated with a soft internal glow. The secondary lift, waiting, ready, summoned by her blood. Lena's breath hitched. The lift surface bore no controls, no markings, only a single symbol engraved in the metal, a triangle, the same one she'd found in the flight logs. The same one marked on the keycard, the emblem of the operation. The man stepped away, shaking his head as if torn between warning her and letting fate take its course. "You don't have clearance for what's below," he said. "Not by training, not by authority." She turned to him, voice steady despite the fear coiling inside her. "But I have clearance by birth." The lift hummed softly, inviting her, summoning her, recognizing her. She stepped toward it. The man reached out instinctively, then stopped himself, as if realizing no force on earth could pull her back now. Lena placed her foot on the platform. It vibrated in response. Warm, alive, awakening, the vault lights dimmed, the hum synchronized with the lift's pulse, the air thickened, swirling with the metallic scent of secrecy older than she was. She took one last breath, clutching the unopened envelope in her hand. The lift shuddered, then it began to descend, slowly, smoothly, silently. As the vault above her shrank into a sliver of light, Lena realized that everything she thought she'd discovered, the tower, the keypad, the binders, the cache, had been only the surface of a truth far deeper. A truth her father had buried in the one place he knew she would one day find. And as the lift sank into the golden, lit depths of level 4, Lena understood. The real secret wasn't the money. It wasn't the vault. It wasn't even the hidden facility. The real secret was waiting for her in the dark below, and it had been waiting for 34 years. The lift sank so smoothly into the earth that Lena barely felt movement, only the shifting pressure in her ears, the muffled sigh of air adjusting around her, and the slow, dimming echo of the vault above as its light narrowed into a thin, trembling halo. Then even that vanished, darkness wrapped around her like velvet, warm, silent, alive. The hum of the machinery followed her downward, deepening, stretching, resonating through every steel panel of the moving platform until it felt less like sound and more like a presence, something ancient and engineered that had waited decades to feel movement again. Lena kept one hand curled around the envelope marked Harwood, and the other tight around the flashlight she couldn't bring herself to switch on. Some instinct whispered that whatever waited below was already watching. After a long descent, long enough to feel unnatural, longer than the depth of any ordinary bunker, the lift began to slow. The hum shifted, rising into a higher tone as if welcoming her. Then, a soft chime. Gentle, measuring, approving. Warm light bloomed beneath her feet, chasing back the dark with a golden glow that felt eerily organic, as though the chamber itself exhaled light. The platform halted. Lena lifted her gaze and froze. She stood at the entrance to a massive circular chamber, far larger than anything above ground, larger even than the vault she had just descended from. The walls curved in a perfect ring, lined with reinforced panels that shimmered faintly beneath the golden light. Symbols, triangles, numerical codes, stamped insignias, ran in precise patterns along every surface, repeating like a language she didn't yet understand. But the center of the chamber, that was what held her breath hostage. A colossal vault door dominated the room, far larger than the level 4 entrance, its seamless steel surface unmarred by rust or age. Embedded in its center was a round glass panel filled with swirling frost and light, shimmering like an artificial aurora. Thin veins of blue energy pulsed outward from the glass, disappearing into conduits along the walls. The entire door was alive. Heat radiated from it like the slow breath of a sleeping titan. The platform clicked into place, locking itself with a precision that sent a small vibration through the floor. Lena stepped off carefully, her boots crunching against a thin layer of frost that cracked like frozen sugar beneath each step. She approached slowly. The chamber's temperature shifted around her, warm on her face, cold on her fingertips, pockets of heat and chill weaving through the air in patterns too steady to be random. This place wasn't abandoned. It was maintained, regulated, preserved. Her flashlight beam swept across the floor, revealing deep tracks, marks left by crates, equipment, heavy transport carts. Some were old, worn into the steel, others fresh. Her pulse thickened. Someone else had been here recently, not 30 years ago, not months ago, days, maybe hours. Her breath fogged as she neared the center vault. The glass panel brightened. The blue veins pulsed faster. Something behind the door stirred in response. The air changed, charged with static, thick with the metallic scent of something stored under pressure for far too long. Lena's voice escaped her in a thin, trembling whisper. "What were you hiding down here?" The chamber didn't answer, but the vault did. A circular interface lit up beside the door, all sleek, entirely different from the 1980s era technology above. This system was advanced, smooth, seamless, a generation ahead of anything she'd seen in her engineering career. Text appeared across the interface in glowing blue letters. Biolineage confirmed secondary access, granted remaining security layer. Locked a pause, then a new line, override key required. Lena's heart lurched. Override key, her father's envelope. Her hand trembled as she lifted the fragile paper. The cold had stiffened its edges. The ink on the front shimmered faintly under the warm chamber light. She wanted to open it, needed to, but fear crawled up her spine like icy fingers. What if the answer inside changed everything she thought she knew about him? About herself, about why she had been drawn here. Her thumb slipped beneath the envelope flap. The paper cracked softly, but before she could open it, a sharp metallic echo rang across the chamber. Not from machinery, not from the vault, from behind her. Lena spun around, flashlight slicing through the golden haze. Someone stepped out of the shadows near the lift. Not the man from level 4, someone new, someone armed, someone tall, deliberate, cloaked in matte, black tactical gear that reflected none of the chamber's light. A visor concealed his face, a rifle hung at his side, a badge on his chest glinted sharply beneath her beam. Strike Operations Fairway Protocol Unit. Her stomach dropped. Another operative, alive, active, not abandoned. He pointed directly at the envelope in her hand. His voice was a calm, lethal whisper. "Miss Harwood, Step away from the door. Lena's breath hitched. Her pulse spiked. Her world shrank to a narrow point of fear and realization. She had not been alone down here, not for a single second. The vault wasn't the only thing that had awakened. The people who once guarded it, who once worked in the shadows, had awakened too. She clutched the envelope closer to her chest. The operative stepped forward, boots silent across the frosted steel. "Put the override key on the ground," he said, and walked toward me slowly. Her mind raced. The man upstairs was terrified of the vault. This man was terrified of her opening it, meaning whatever was inside wasn't just dangerous. It was forbidden, something no one was meant to see, not even him. Lena stepped back instinctively. Her voice cracked through the cold. "What's behind that door?" The operative's jaw tightened behind the visor. "That information is beyond your clearance." Lena's grip tightened on the envelope. But my blood opened it. His silence said everything. He lifted the rifle, not aiming but threatening. "Do not make me choose protocol over mercy." A tremor shuddered through the vault behind her. The blue veins pulsed faster. The glass panel glowed like a rising dawn. Something beneath that door was waking. Lena realized she had seconds to choose whether she obeyed him or followed the legacy her father left in her hand. The operative took another step closer. "Put it down." Lena's eyes drifted to the vault, to the swirling light beneath the glass, to the fractures forming within the frost, to the envelope burning with unanswered truth. The chamber hummed in rising anticipation. The vault pulsed, the air vibrated. The operative reached for her, and Lena, breath trembling, heart pounding, made her choice, the one her father had prepared her for. She tore the envelope open. The envelope tore with a dry, brittle snap, the sound slicing through the chamber like a warning shot. Tiny fragments of paper drifted into the golden air, catching the light as they fluttered down. Lena didn't feel her own breath leave her lungs, but she felt the entire room react. The vault's glow surged, blue veins igniting, glass spiraling with light, the hum rising from a tremor to a throb. The operative lunged, "Stop," but it was already too late. Her fingers slipped inside the envelope, brushing something metallic, smooth, thin, cold as ice despite the warmth of the chamber. She pulled it free. A key, not a card, not a code strip. A physical key, small, black, forged from a metal she didn't recognize. Triangular tooth, hollowed center, the same emblem engraved on it, a triangle surrounded by a ring. The operative froze mid-step. His boots screeched against the frost. His body locked in place as if someone had yanked an invisible chain tight around his spine. His voice dropped into a hoarse whisper of disbelief. That key was destroyed, a beat. It was supposed to be destroyed. Lena stared at the object in her palm, the edges shimmering faintly in the vault's low light. The warmth she felt wasn't heat, it was recognition. The key pulsed once, a soft vibration that traveled into her bones. Her father's legacy, his handwriting on the envelope, his name carved into the vault frame. This key had never been meant for the operatives, or the government, or the system that buried this place. It had been meant for her. The operative regained motion, taking another slow, careful step, his rifle lowering as if the key itself were a threat. "Listen to me," he murmured. "You don't understand what that opens. It was never meant to be used, not by anyone, especially not." His visor tilted toward her. He didn't finish the sentence. He didn't need to. The vault answered for him. A deafening boom echoed through the chamber as the circular interface beside the door lit up in violent gold. The glass panel at the vault's center rippled like disturbed water. Frost shattered outward in a ring, spraying shards across the floor like tiny shooting stars. Text burned across the interface. Primary override detected. Final access. Key required. Insert key. Below, a small hatch opened at the base of the vault. Silent, smooth, waiting. Waiting for that exact key. The operative raised a hand, desperation cracking through his mask of control. Lena, don't. Whatever your father told you, however he prepared you, you weren't meant to continue this. They shut Fairway down for a reason. The hum swelled beneath her boots. The chamber vibrated. The waft of warm air from the vault deepened into a heated current pulling toward her hand. Lena swallowed hard, breath shaking, and whispered, "My father didn't tell me anything." The operative blinked, taken aback. "Then why, I found this place," she said, voice trembling but certain. "I followed the clues and this key reacted to me, not you." His chest rose sharply. "You don't know what's behind that door." She met his gaze. "No one does, that's the problem." The vault pulsed again, the light flaring, the veins surging, the hum deepening into something that felt alive. The operative's voice cracked. What's behind that door should stay buried. It was the entire point of Operation Fairway Shutdown. The chamber's lights flickered violently as if rejecting the statement, and Lena understood something with chilling clarity. The shutdown hadn't been a containment, it had been a betrayal. Someone had sealed this facility not to protect the world from what was inside, but to protect themselves from it being found. The key vibrated again in her palm, gentle, insistent, guiding. The vault wanted to open. And the legacy her father left had brought her here on purpose. Lena stepped forward. The operative raised his rifle, shaking now, not from aggression but from fear. "Don't make me enforce protocol," he warned. "If that door opens, there's no coming back from what follows." She stepped closer. The hatch glowed brighter, spreading a warm halo across the frost. Another step. The operative shouted, "Stop," and lunged, but the chamber itself intervened. A shockwave burst from the vault, silent, invisible, absolute. It slammed into the room with the force of a hurricane of compressed air. Console screens shattered. Frost exploded off the walls. The operative was thrown backward as if struck by a giant's hand, crashing against the steel bulkhead with a sickening thud. Lena dropped to her knees, shielding her head as the room roared with rising heat and electricity. The key in her palm remained untouched, untossed, steady. When the air settled, she rose slowly. The operative lay on the ground, conscious but dazed, coughing, reaching toward her with trembling fingers. "Don't," he rasped. "Please, it's not a treasure, it's not wealth, it's not money." Lena stood before the glowing hatch. She lifted the key. "It's not money I'm opening," she whispered. "It's answers." As the vault's ancient machinery exhaled heat in one long, trembling breath, Lena inserted the triangular key into the waiting lock, and the chamber went silent. So silent she could hear her own heartbeat. Then, click, a sound so small, so simple, so final, and the great vault door began to move. The vault door did not swing open. It unfolded. Steel plates shifted in layered spirals, rotating like the petals of a mechanical flower waking from a 34-year sleep. Each movement released a cascade of frost that drifted across the chamber like glittering ash. The air warmed with every turning segments, oft currents whispering outward, smelling faintly of metal, oil, and something older. Something untouched by human breath for decades. Lena stepped back as the final layer of the vault door drew apart, revealing absolute black beyond. Not darkness, not emptiness, a void that felt conscious. Her light probed the threshold, but the darkness devoured the beam, swallowing every photon before it could land. It was a darkness with weight, with depth, with purpose. Behind her, the operative groaned, trying to push himself up on shaking elbows. His voice cracked, "Don't go in there. Please, you still have time to walk away." Lena didn't answer because she felt it, the pull, The same pull she'd felt when she first stepped onto the dead runway, the same silent beckoning that had followed her through the tower and into level 4, the same voice of a place that had not wanted her gone, but wanted her awake. She took one step closer. Warm air drifted from the black chamber ahead, brushing her cheeks like a warning. Or a welcome. Beneath it she sensed the faint vibration of machinery. Quiet, rhythmic, alive, not abandoned, not forgotten, running, silently, for decades. She crossed the threshold. Warmth enveloped her instantly, melting the last traces of frost from her hair and gloves. The darkness receded, not with light, but with shape. A dim golden glow emerged from hidden panels along a curving ceiling, revealing what the inner vault truly was. Not a storage room, not a treasury chamber, not an archive, a subterranean operations hub. Rows of desks formed a perfect ring around the chamber, each station armed with controls and screens preserved beneath layers of dustless glass. The equipment wasn't old. It wasn't new. It was something in between, frozen in a moment in time, waiting for a signal that never came. But one thing was unmistakable: none of the consoles were empty. Personal items cluttered their surfaces: pens, mugs, notebooks, flight logs, badges, jackets. Chairs pulled halfway back, pages mid-scribble, a radio headset looped over a monitor. This room had not been vacated. It had been abandoned mid-day, mid-thought, mid-breath. Lena's chest tightened. It was as if everyone here had been ordered to stand up and never returned. Her flashlight swept across a half-written memo. Confirmation pending central response, awaiting final. The sentence ended abruptly, the pen left uncapped beside it. A creeping dread clawed up her spine. Whatever had happened in this room had happened fast. She moved deeper into the hub, boots echoing softly. The glow above brightened slightly, as if responding to her presence. The air hummed, steady, measured, alive. A soft noise drew her attention to the center of the chamber. A single console glowed, the only one active, the only one not preserved in frozen time. Its screen pulsed with blue light. Lena approached slowly, breath catching in her throat as the text sharpened into view. Operation Fairway active status, primary asset station, online waiting for command input. Her heartbeat slammed against her ribs. This facility was not dead. It was running on stand-by, waiting for her. For the Harwood key. A faint shuffle sounded behind her. The operative had made it to his feet barely. He stumbled into the room, bracing himself against a console, his breath ragged, visor cracked from the earlier blast. His voice was raw with terror. "You don't understand what this place is." Lena didn't turn. "This is a command center," she said quietly. "For what?" He shook his head. "For something that should never have existed." Her eyes dropped to the glowing screen. Beneath the main text was a second prompt. "Identify authorized user." Lena blinked as her own name faded onto the screen. Soft, ghost-like, inevitable. Harwood, the operative swore under his breath. "They tied the whole system to lineage," he said. "Not rank, not clearance, blood. They didn't trust personnel. They trusted families. Your father was one of the originals." Lena's stomach twisted. "My father wasn't military." "No." The operative rasped, but he was an engineer, one of the code architects behind Fairway's security grid. "The failsafes are in your DNA." The glowing text flickered, awaiting confirmation. Lena stared. "My father designed this part of it," he said. "He helped lock away whatever they stole, whatever they hid, but he didn't expect someone like you to come looking." Her breath wavered. "Then what is the primary asset?" The operative's silence lasted a long, painful second. "Then, money was the decoy." His voice trembled. "The true asset wasn't currency. It was intelligence. Evidence. Black. Budget documents that could expose the entire operation. Her pulse stopped. So the crates held cash to disguise the existence of something far more dangerous. Dangerous how? Because the documents prove the airport was never a transport hub. He swallowed. It was a laundering portal, a supply chain for illegal off-books funding. Billions moved through here, disappearing into operations no one admitted existed. Lena's throat tightened, and the evidence is below us. He nodded slowly. And that, he whispered, is what those men will kill to keep hidden. Men, not just him. Others. Lena felt the chamber tilt around her. They're coming. He looked at her through his cracked visor, fear shining in his eyes. They tracked my signal when I rebooted the surface systems. More operatives are already in transit. Armed, erasing this place isn't protocol, it's survival. Lena stepped back instinctively. And what about you? What are you trying to do? The man drew a breath as if it hurt. I'm trying to keep you alive. The chamber lights flickered hard. A loud, metallic alarm burst through the room, not from the console, from the vault above. The man's face drained of color. They breached level 4. Lena's blood ran cold. The operatives had arrived, and they were now in the vault, in the facility, in the same underground labyrinth. Hunting. The screen before her flashed urgently. Final access. Unlocked primary asset storage. Open exit. Immediately, the operative grabbed her arm with frantic force. Lena, move, they're coming. She turned toward the corridor just as a distant, echoing gunshot cracked through the vault level above. A second, a third. Footsteps thundered through the metal halls. Voices shouted orders. The facility groaned as the intruders stormed downward. The man pulled her behind a console, voice trembling. You're the only one who can open the primary asset, and they know that. They will shoot on sight. Lena's pulse roared. Gunfire echoed closer. Metal boots pounded the stairs. Voices barked commands she couldn't make out. And then a chilling realization hit her like a punch. The primary asset door behind her was now unlocked. Wide open, waiting, and whatever truth lay inside might be the only thing that could save her life. As the chamber lights dimmed under the pressure of armed men descending toward her, Lena understood. The hunters had arrived, and the only way out was through the secret her father died protecting. The gunshots above weren't distant anymore. They were descending. Heavy boots hammered the metal stairs, echoing through the facility like war drums. Voices barked clipped, ruthless commands. A metallic clang jolted the air as a breach charge detonated somewhere near the level 4 entrance. The strike operatives were coming fast. They had numbers. They had training. They had orders, and Lena had none of those things. Her breath fluttered in a shallow, trembling rhythm as she crouched behind the console with the injured man. The chamber lights flickered under the shockwaves of footsteps beating through the metal skeleton of the facility. They're coming straight for this room, the man whispered, coughing hard. His visor was cracked. Blood dripped from beneath the edge of his mask. They won't stop. Not until you're dead and the primary asset is destroyed. Lena pressed her back against the cold steel, her fingers tightening around the edges of the envelope she'd torn open minutes earlier. The triangular key pulsed faintly in her palm, calm, steady, betraying no fear. Unlike her, another burst of gunfire exploded, closer this time. Shouts echoed, sector clear, move to the vault, locate the Harwood girl. Permission to shoot confirmed. Lena's heart slammed against her ribs, each beat sharp and cold. They know my name, she murmured. They knew you were coming the second you used the card in the tower. The man rasped. They've been monitoring dormant sensors for years. You woke up everything they wanted left dead. A metallic groan shuddered down the corridor, one of the heavy vault doors above being forced open. The man grabbed her wrist, Listen carefully. There's no outrunning them. They'll scan every chamber. They'll block every exit. There's only one place they won't dare follow you." Lena swallowed hard. Her voice cracked. "The primary asset room." He nodded. "It's your only chance, and it's what you came here for, isn't it?" But Lena didn't answer. She couldn't. Because in truth, she didn't know anymore. She didn't know if she had come for answers or justice, or because something in her blood had been pulled toward this buried truth, long before she understood what any of it meant. All she knew was what her father had written on the envelope flap, words she hadn't fully processed until now. "If this finds you, it means I failed. Don't let them bury what I died to protect." Her chest tightened. Her throat burned. The man pulled her closer, forcing her to look at him through his broken visor. "They'll kill you," he gasped, "but they won't risk damaging the asset. They don't know what's in there. They only know it can't reach daylight." A sudden, deafening boom shook the chamber as the last barrier above gave way. The operatives were steps away now. Lena rose. She didn't feel brave. She didn't feel ready. But something inside her, all it instinct, bloodline, legacy, knew the truth. Whatever waited in the primary asset vault was her father's final message, his last secret, his last warning, and her only path forward. Another explosion thundered overhead. Voices roared. Target confirmed. Move, move. Lena sprinted toward the inner vault. The operatives' flashlights spilled down the corridor behind her, sharp white cones slicing through the smoke and shadows. "Lena, go!" the man shouted, pulling himself into their line of fire to buy her seconds. "Run!" The gunfire started instantly, barking, screaming, merciless. The chamber rattled under the hail of bullets. Lena didn't look back. She threw herself through the circular opening into the primary asset room, just as a blast scorched the wall above her head, showering sparks across the steel floor. She landed hard, palms skidding across polished metal. From the corridor behind her, she heard the man scream, a sound that cut through her marrow, and then everything went brutally silent. Her pulse roared in her ears. No time to mourn, no time to breathe. Lena scrambled to her feet and spun around, slamming her palm against a glowing sensor beside the inner vault door. It recognized her instantly. Harwood Access verified sealing primary chamber. The door slid shut behind her with a deep thud, drowning out the shouts and gunfire beyond. Steel locks spiraled into place. Air hissed as pressure rebalanced. Only then did Lena realize she was standing alone finally, fully, inside the primary asset vault. Her flashlight swept the room, and she froze. The chamber was not filled with crates, not filled with weapons, not filled with technology. It held one single object. In the center of the room stood a cylindrical steel pod, taller than she was, wrapped in thick coils of insulated wiring and temperature regulators. Frost clung to its seams. The pod's surface gleamed under soft golden lights. A triangular insignia was etched into its side, the same emblem from the key, the same one in her father's notes, the same one that had followed her down every level. Her voice broke through the silence, brittle and small. "What is this?" She stepped closer, breath trembling. The pod pulsed with slow, rhythmic light, blue, then gold, then blue again, like a heartbeat. Like a cry from something asleep inside. A small panel near its base flickered. Text glowed across it. Primary asset class, a sealed 02/12/1991. Handle with extreme caution. Then a final line appeared. Containment status, alive. Lena staggered back, her whole body turning cold. Alive? Something alive was sealed inside, something her father helped lock away, something the strike operatives were desperate to destroy. Her hand shook uncontrollably as she reached toward the pod. A voice crackled faintly from the corridor outside, a voice amplified by a tactical mic, booming with authority. "Breach the door, now. Explosives were being primed. Lena had seconds, not minutes, not time to think. Just the truth, and the choice. The pod's lights pulsed fast, responding to her presence. Her father's handwriting flashed through her mind. Don't let them bury what I died to protect. Lena pressed her palm against the pod's scanning plate, and the chamber lit up in a blaze of blinding gold as the thing inside began to whack. The golden light burst from the pod the instant Lena's palm met the scanning plate, so bright it carved her silhouette onto the steel walls. Heat rushed out in a violent wave, forcing her backward as the pod's internal systems roared awake. Coils along its spine glowed molten gold, trembling with a rising, rhythmic surge like a creature fighting to breathe after decades of being locked in ice. Behind the sealed vault door, the strike operatives shouted commands. Boots pounded, metal rattled, explosives clicked and armed. Time was thinner than air. Inside the chamber, the pod throbbed with a steady, living pulse. Alive, the word hammered in Lena's mind like a drum. Alive, alive, alive. Steam hissed from hidden vents as the pod's temperature regulators released 34 years of frozen pressure. Frost on its seams melted into thin rivulets that trickled down the metal like sweat. A sharp electronic chime echoed from the scanning plate. The pod responded to Lena's DNA. Text illuminated on the panel. Harwood Protocol initiated primary asset. Resurrection sequence beginning warning. Do not interrupt. Lena's breath caught in her throat. Resurrection, not activation, not reboot, not deployment. Resurrection. Her pulse raced violently. What are you? She whispered. The pod answered, not in words, but in movement. A deep, rumbling click reverberated through the chamber as the cylindrical pod cracked open along a vertical seam. Not fully, just a fraction, just enough for warm light to bleed through the thin gap. A second crack followed, then a third. Inside, a silhouette shifted, slow, faint, human-shaped. Lena staggered back, horror and awe twisting inside her until she could barely breathe. It wasn't a creature, it wasn't a weapon, it wasn't a machine, it was a person, a living person, sealed, frozen, preserved, inside a vault that had never been meant to open. The pod's light dimmed momentarily, then surged with new intensity. The silhouette stirred again, arms twitching, chest rising with the first fragile gasp of air. A gasp that broke 34 years of silence. The pod's internal lights adjusted, revealing a face through the translucent frost of the inner chamber. Pale, peaceful, and unmistakably human. Tubes connected to veins, electrodes fixed across a forehead, a breathing apparatus sealed over the mouth and nose. Someone had been kept alive inside this thing, somehow, and now they were waking. A sudden explosion rocked the outer vault. Boom, dust rained from the ceiling. A crack split the chamber wall. Heat from the blast rippled through the air. The strike operatives had breached the first barrier. Lena turned toward the door as boots thundered down the corridor. Shouts followed. Secure the target. Eliminate the witness. Her stomach twisted. They would be through the final door in seconds. She spun back toward the pod, shaking, desperate. Who are you? She whispered again, voice cracking. Why did they hide you? The pod's internal speaker crackled. Static. Then a faint, fractured voice, male. Barely conscious, slurred by decades of cryogenic sleep. Turn it off. The voice sent a shockwave through her. She stumbled closer. What should I turn off? The breathing mask inside the pod fogged with a weak exhale. The voice trembled through the chamber again. Not safe. They'll kill us all. Lena pressed her palm to the glass. What aren't safe? The operatives, the vault, the system. A slow blink from the man inside. His eyes were glazed with cold and confusion, but recognition flickered through the haze the instant he saw her. You look like him. Her heart slammed painfully. Like who? Harwood? She felt the ground drop beneath her, Her father, this man knew her father, this man recognized her blood. What happened here? Lena whispered. Why did they freeze you? His lashes fluttered, breath trembling. Not freeze. Protect. Evidence. Everything. Fairway. All of it. Evidence. The word stabbed through her. The crates of cash, the logs, the erased identities, the shut-down airport, this man, was the evidence they couldn't burn, couldn't erase, couldn't bury without trace. He wasn't the danger, he was the truth. The breathing mask fogged again with a long, painful inhale. Don't let them. He couldn't finish, the words dissolved into a choke of breath. A violent impact rattled the inner vault door. Boom, boom, boom. The final barrier shook with every strike. Metal bent inward. Bolts screamed. A single hinge jolted loose, clattering across the floor. The operatives were nearly inside. Lena turned back to the pod. I can't leave you, she whispered. They'll kill you, they'll kill both of us. The man's voice cracked in a single broken whisper. Not if you release me. The pod's panel flashed urgently. Phase 2. Manual override required caution. Life support unlock will trigger full facility exposure. Lena swallowed, trembling. She understood the warning. If she unlocked him, every alarm, every system, every hidden log in the facility would broadcast above ground. Fairway wouldn't stay buried. The money, the crimes, the secret operatives, the covert funding, the shutdown, everything. Boom, another hit. The vault door buckled outward. She had seconds left. The man inside the pod opened his eyes fully for the first time, a deep, unbroken stare that sliced straight through her fear. Do it. His voice trembled with urgency. Finish what your father started. Her breath shattered. Her knees nearly buckled. Her father, this man, their secrets, her name carved into vault doors, the key made for her hand. Everything converged into this single moment. The final strike against the door was deafening. Boom, screws rained down, metal peeled back. Gloved hands reached through the widening crack. Breach, breach, they were here. Lena lifted her shaking hand, placed it on the manual override lever, and pulled. The override lever fought her for a heartbeat, resisting, straining, then snapped free with a metallic crack that echoed like a gunshot across the sealed chamber. The pod reacted instantly. Alarms wailed. Lights flared. The temperature inside the room dropped so sharply Lena's breath crystallized midair. A violent surge of steam burst from the base of the pod as ancient locks disengaged all at once. Bolts firing outward, metal shearing free, pressure valves screaming under rapid decompression. The man inside the pod arched, his body jolting as warm air rushed into lungs that hadn't tasted oxygen freely in decades. His back slammed against the interior padding, fingers curling, chest struggling between instinct and shock. Behind Lena, the vault door thundered under another blow. Boom, the metal frame buckled. Splinters of steel hissed across the floor. The operatives were seconds from pouring in. The pod's final restraints cracked apart, spilling coils of wiring across the floor like severed veins. A rush of cold vapor flooded the chamber, sweeping across Lena's boots, brushing over her hands, lifting the hair at the back of her neck. Then the front of the pod exploded outward. A panel of reinforced glass shot across the room and shattered against the wall in a cloud of glittering shards. Lena dropped to her knees, shielding her head as heat erupted from the cracked chamber in waves. When the steam thinned, she lifted her eyes and saw him. The man stumbled from the pod, collapsing halfway onto the metal floor. His legs trembled violently beneath him, buckling under the weight of returning life. Electrodes dangled from his skin. Tubes tore from his arms, dripping with thawed fluid that steamed on contact with the warmer air. He coughed, A raw, agonized sound as his lungs fought through decades of stagnation. But he was alive, fully alive, easy. Lena whispered, sliding to his side, gripping his arm as he leaned heavily against her. "Just breathe, stay with me." His fingers clutched her sleeve with startling strength. His eyes ice, blue, bloodshot, but deeply conscious, locked onto hers. "Harwood, he rasped you, did it?" She shook her head. "No, I don't even know what I've done." He drew a breath so sharp it sounded like a tear through fabric. "You opened the vault, the real one, the one they built the whole airport around, the evidence. They buried me with it." Another impact slammed behind them, boom, and the inner vault door split, tearing down its seam. Armed boots were visible through the widening crack. Lena spoke quickly, voice trembling. "What evidence? What were you protecting?" The man's gaze flicked toward the consoles lining the chamber walls. A single server in the corner blinked with a faint blue pulse, synchronized with his cadence of breath. The recordings, he whispered, the transfers, the names, everything they hid, everything they stole. He swallowed painfully. "Your father hid them with me. He sealed me in before they could erase it all." Her breath froze. "My father did this. He helped you." The man nodded weakly. "Your father exposed them. Fairway was a laundering engine. Billions moved off books when he found out. He ran to me. We sealed the evidence in this chamber." A ragged breath. "They found us. We didn't have time. I volunteered to stay. Cryo was the only way to keep the files with a living witness." The room shuddered. Sparks rained from overhead lights. Gunfire peppered the cracking door. Lena's pulse roared. "Then why didn't he tell me any of this?" "To protect you." The man gripped her arm again. "They swore they'd hunt anyone with his name, and they did." Her stomach twisted. "Is he alive?" she whispered. The man's eyes softened with pain deeper than any wound. "No." They silenced him. The night Fairway fell. They made it look like an accident. Lena's vision blurred. Her knees weakened beneath the weight of grief that hit like a physical strike. Her father hadn't abandoned her. He hadn't been distant by choice. He had been murdered for protecting the truth sealed in this room. The vault door behind them screamed as a breach charge burned molten red across its weakened hinge. The man pressed a shaking hand to her shoulder. "Harwood, a breath. Listen carefully." She leaned closer, holding him upright. "None of us leave this room alive unless you trigger the broadcast." "Broadcast?" she whispered. He nodded toward the central console, now glowing brightly, waking from decades of forced sleep. "The evidence. Your father hid all of it in my biometrics, in the cryo logs. The moment you released me, the system started sinking." A faint smile crossed his lips, fractured but fierce. "You can expose everything, every dollar, every operative, every crime." Her pulse stilled. The truth wasn't just hidden here. It was alive inside the man who survived 34 years of silence. The vault door blew inward. A roar of fire and smoke blasted through the chamber as armed operatives flooded in, visors down, rifles raised, formation tight and lethal. The man beside her tried to stand, failed, and sagged against her shoulder. "Go," he hissed. "Activate it." Lena didn't hesitate. She sprinted toward the central console, the heartbeat of the sealed truth, her boots sliding over frost and shattered glass. Bullets ripped through the metal around her as the operatives shouted. "Target in sight. Stop her. Fire." The cryo survivor pushed himself upright, staggering into their line of fire with the last strength in his failing body. "No," he shouted, voice breaking. "Harwood, run!" Lena reached the console. Her hand slammed down on the activation plate. The screen exploded with light. Fairway Evidence Archive Broadcast System, Online Route to Federal Oversight, Treasury Fraud Division, National Press Feed, Global Wire Protocol. A final line blinked. Confirm release. Behind her a gunshot, a body fell, a scream cut through steel. Lena lifted her trembling hand and pressed YES. The moment Lena hit YES, The chamber shuddered with a surge of power so violent it felt like the facility itself inhaled. Lights across the circular room flared white, then gold, then burst into rapid blinking sequences as long, dead systems awoke in unison. A piercing alarm spiraled upward, echoing through every level, from the deepest vault to the empty runways above. Broadcast initiated. The words boomed through unseen speakers, layered in static, ancient, and absolute. A blast of wind shot upward through a hidden vent as the entire command grid roared online. The console screens exploded with streams of data. Encrypted files, cryo logs, transfer receipts, bank codes, personnel names, surveillance recordings, all pouring into the transmission channels, unstoppable, irreversible. Fairway's buried truth was clawing its way to the surface. Bull, it's cracked across the pod behind her. Operatives screamed orders through thick smoke, but Lena heard none of it. Her focus stayed locked on the screens flashing in front of her reach line of day. A fragment of the crime that had destroyed her father's life. She watched in a daze as decades of evidence shot upward toward satellites, servers, oversight agencies. Toward daylight, behind her, the vault erupted in gunfire as operatives fought to force their way inside. Boots thundered across metal. Commands barked like gunshots. Console control, now, stop the broadcast. Shoot her. Lena ducked instinctively. A bullet tore past her ear, ripping a spark from the steel wall. She felt the heat of it lick her cheek. She crouched lower, heart hammering, power humming beneath her palms. The screen began flashing. Transmission uploading 23%, 35%, 48%, then a warning blinked. Intrusion detected. Countermeasures active. The operatives were trying to override the broadcast, but the system, the one her father built, refused to let them. The interface flared, sending an electric pulse through the room that knocked two of the intruders backward. They slammed against the wall with bone, cracking force. Lena didn't look back. All her senses tunneled on the growing progress bar. 63%, 71%, 82% gunfire tore another panel from the wall. The chamber filled with smoke and sparks. The cryo survivor, weak, bleeding, barely upright, dragged himself between Lena and the operatives again, refusing to fall. He didn't shout this time. He didn't beg. He simply stood, a wall of fragile flesh and fading breath, because that was the last loyal duty he had left. His voice cracked into the chaos, barely audible. Don't stop. The operatives fired. He staggered. Blood hit the floor like warm rain. He still did not fall. Lena screamed his name, though she didn't even know it, her voice ripping from her throat with raw fear. But he turned toward her, a faint, final smile trembling at his lips. Your father would be proud. Another bullet. He fell. Lena pressed her hand against her mouth to keep from crying out. Tears burned her eyes, but she forced herself to turn back to the console. Because his sacrifice meant nothing if she didn't finish what he and her father died for. The screen flashed again. 99%, a single heartbeat of silence followed. Then 100% transmission, complete the entire chamber lit with white, hot brilliance. Above ground, an invisible burst shot through the air like lightning through clouds, through satellites, through servers, through every system still listening. The truth had escaped. Lena staggered as the last surge of energy tore through the chamber. Her vision blurred. The screens flickered violently, then shattered in a spray of glass from the overload. The broadcast was unstoppable now. No operative, no agency, no contractor could claw it back. Fairway's secret was alive. The operatives realized it before she did. The shooting stopped. A thick, horrified silence filled the vault. Only the hiss of smoke and the distant alarm breaking the stillness. One operative stepped forward, lowering his weapon slowly, the red glow of emergency lights flickering across his visor. You've doomed us all, he whispered, Another cursed under his breath, slamming a fist into the wall. A third backed away as though the air had turned toxic. Their voices rose, fearful, frantic, splintered. We need extraction. Now. This wasn't supposed to happen. We're exposed. We're all exposed. Lena lifted her head, trembling as she stood. Her clothes were burned. Her hands were shaking. Her ears rang with the echo of gunfire and loss. But she stood tall, because for the first time in her life, she wasn't just echoing her father's shadow, she was fulfilling it. A sudden, heavy silence cut through the chaos. Every operative turned toward the chamber entrance. Their panic shifted into something stranger, confusion laced with dread. Lena followed their gaze, in the curling smoke of the breached doorway. Another figure began descending the stairs. Not an operative, not part of the strike team. A lone silhouette, tall, steady, unhurried. Lena's heart stilled. She didn't know who it was. They didn't speak. They didn't raise a weapon. But every operative in the room straightened at once, guns lowering in instinctive fear as the figure stepped into the golden light and removed his hood. Lena's breath caught in her throat. She recognized him, not from life, from photographs her father used to keep hidden in a battered box beneath their old attic floorboards. The whistleblower, the man who vanished, the man whose disappearance started the shutdown. And now he stood alive, very real, at the threshold of the vault, looking at Lena with eyes full of knowledge she wasn't ready for. Knowledge she needed. Knowledge that would decide what happened next. And as the air thickened with the gravity of everything that had just been unleashed, Lena realized her battle wasn't over, not yet. The truth was out, but justice still waited on the runway above. The smoke parted slowly around the silhouette, curling off his jacket as the lights flickered overhead. The air was thick with metallic heat, drifting sparks, and the heavy, uneasy breathing of the operatives who just moments earlier believed themselves untouchable. Now they stood frozen, not out of discipline, but out of fear. The man stepped fully into the chamber. Lena stared. He was older than the photographs, lines carved deep into his face, hair graying at the temples, but the unmistakable sharpness in his eyes was the same. Those eyes were what Lena remembered most from the attic photograph box, wide, watchful, always looking just beyond the edges of the frame, as though danger lurked behind the camera itself. He carried no weapon. He didn't need one. His presence alone silenced the room. Even the injured operatives, those gripping bleeding arms or staggering from the shock wave, stood straighter when he appeared, as if an old instinct snapped awake. The whistleblower, her father's friend, her father's co-conspirator, the only man who disappeared deeper than the truth itself, and here he was alive. He lowered his hood, locking eyes with Lena. "Your father told me you'd be brave," he said quietly. Her breath caught. The words were soft, but they carried the weight of years of tragedy, of secrets sealed in steel and ice. "You knew him," she whispered. "I knew him better than anyone here," he replied, his gaze flicking toward the operatives with a cold, controlled disdain. "We built Fairway's first security protocols. We watched it get corrupted, and we tried to shut it down." One operative stepped forward, shoulders tense. "Sir, we thought you were declared dead." "That was the point," he said flatly. "Your employer wanted me dead. I obliged." His voice was calm, even lethal. Another operative shifted nervously. "We didn't expect. You expected the truth to stay buried." The whistleblower cut in, taking another slow step into the vault. "You expected the world to never know the billions siphoned off the books, or the men who died for trying to expose it." Lena swallowed hard. "My father," she whispered. He turned back to her, eyes softening. "Your father was a good man," he said, "too good for this machine. When he uncovered the internal theft cycles, he brought everything to me. I told him to run the evidence directly to federal oversight, but he hesitated. Why? Lena asked. The man exhaled, the breath trembling as though he'd held it for a long time. Because you were 6 years old. Lena froze. He didn't want to drag you into this, didn't want you targeted, but once the operatives realized what he'd found, he had no choice. He split the evidence between us, his logs, my testimony, and we shut everything we could before they descended on us. She felt her heart twist. Then, why didn't you come back? She whispered, his gaze darkened. Because I never made it out of this airport. Silence weighed heavy. He gestured toward the corridor behind him, the scorched walls, the debris, the twisted steel. They trapped me underground. I escaped deeper into the restricted wing before they sealed the levels. I've been hiding ever since, waiting for someone who could unlock the vault. Lena's chest tightened. And they tried to kill you, she murmured. He nodded. And when they couldn't find me, they went after your father. Pain flared white, hot behind her ribs. She steadied her voice. Did he? No, I would someday find this place. A faint smile touched his lips. He hoped you wouldn't. Then, softer, but he prepared for the possibility you might. Her heart quivered in her chest. Why me? Because the bloodline lock responded only to one name, Harwood. He tied the fail, safe to you after he realized they were watching him. You were the only one who could open the vault without triggering a kill protocol. Behind them, the operatives stiffened. The lead operative stepped forward, rifle lowered but tense. Sir, he said tightly, whatever you think you're doing. The whistleblower raised a hand, and the man fell silent instantly. You should holster your weapons, the whistleblower warned. Every bullet fired in this vault is recorded. Everything Lena just broadcast was routed through multiple redundancies. Your orders hold no weight now. Panic flickered across the operative's visor. You don't understand our agency, your agency. The whistleblower snapped, no longer exists, not after what she just unleashed. The entire facility vibrated with a low, steady hum, as if the truth Lena had broadcasted was still pulsing upward, threading through the airwaves, unstoppable. He turned back to Lena. Come with me, he said. We don't have long. Before she could respond, the vault lights snapped from gold to a violent red. A blaring alarm filled the chamber. Facility override activated. Self-purge sequence in progress. All personnel evacuate immediately. Lena's eyes widened. Self-purge, she gasped. They're going to destroy the entire airport. The whistleblower shook his head. No, he said grimly. They're going to bury us alive. The operatives panicked. Retreat. One shouted. Move, move. We need extraction. Now. The chamber shook violently as explosions detonated in the levels above automatic charges planted decades ago to erase the facility if compromised. Dust and debris rained from the ceiling. Pipes burst in the walls, spraying steam. The floor lurched beneath them. Lena grabbed the whistleblower's arm. What do we do? He met her gaze. Despite the chaos shaking the world around them. We get to the surface. He pointed toward a hidden ladder well at the far corner of the chamber, a narrow vertical escape shaft half, buried behind collapsed pipes. He squeezed her shoulder firmly. And you run, Lena, you run like your father told you to, because once this place goes, everything you've done here becomes the new history. Lena stared at the ladder, the last path upward, then at the ruined pod. The fallen operative, the man who had died buying her time, her jaw tightened with fierce resolve. She nodded. Together, with alarms screaming, steel groaning, and the buried airport collapsing around them, they sprinted toward the escape shaft. Behind them, Fairway's final secrets burned, but ahead was daylight and justice waiting on the runway. The ladder shook under Lena's hands as she climbed, her palms slipping on the cold metal rungs slick with condensation. Heat and thunder rose beneath her explosions, carving through the buried levels like the earth itself was groaning. Every blast sent vibrations up the shaft, rattling the bolts, showering her with dust so fine it clung to her hair like ash. Below her, the whistleblower climbed with steady, practiced rhythm despite the tremors. Above her, daylight was a small square of pale sky. Far away, trembling, fragile, the air in the shaft grew warmer the higher she climbed. Warmer and lighter, the deeper levels were burning. "Don't stop." The whistleblower called softly from below, his voice strained but unwavering. "This place won't survive another breach." Lena didn't need the warning. The metal around them moaned under its own weight. Pipes snapped, concrete groaned. The underground facility, Fairway's hidden heart, was dying. She climbed faster. Her lungs burned with dust. Her arms trembled. Every rung felt heavier, but the square of light above grew brighter, expanding, widening, glowing until it was almost blinding. Then, with a breathless heave, she pulled herself over the edge of the shaft and collapsed onto cracked concrete. The surface, cold wind swept across her skin, real wind, clean air, sky, endless, silver, blue sky, rolling with clouds that moved freely, unburdened by secrets or steel. Lena lay there for a moment, chest heaving, staring up at the sky as sunlight drifted across her face. After everything underground, the darkness, the machinery, the hum of decades, old secrets, this felt unreal, like stepping into another world. A hand emerged from the shaft. She grabbed it, pulling the whistleblower up onto the surface. He collapsed beside her, rolling onto his back with a heavy exhale. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The wind whispered across the abandoned runway. Loose gravel skittered. A lone strip of torn caution tape fluttered near the hangars like a ghost waving farewell. But beneath the stillness, the ground trembled. A deep, hollow collapse echoed from below, the final implosion of Level 4. Fairway was folding inward, swallowing its own bones. The whistleblower pushed himself up onto an elbow, breathing heavily. "It's done," he whispered. "You finished it." Lena stared out across the silent airport. Not long ago, she'd walked onto this runway expecting nothing but weeds, rust, and regret. She'd bought it for $800, a whim she couldn't explain. Now she understood. This place hadn't been waiting for a buyer. It had been waiting for her. A distant rumble rolled beneath them. Concrete buckled near the control tower. A plume of dust shot into the air. The ground shifted again, then stilled. Silence, true silence, not the heavy, suffocating silence of underground chambers, but the quiet of a place finally allowed to rest. Birds circled overhead, real birds, alive and free, cutting arcs of shadow across the runway, as if marking the end of the chapter buried beneath their wings. Lena rose slowly to her feet. The whistleblower remained seated, exhaustion heavy in his posture, but his eyes followed her cautiously. She looked toward the horizon, toward the fields, the hills, the long stretch of cracked tarmac glowing beneath morning light. The airport was still abandoned, still broken, but somehow it no longer felt haunted. The secrets were gone, the lies were dead, the truth was free. A faint buzz of electricity whispered behind her. She turned. The control tower door, the door that had refused to open, that had drawn her into darkness, was ajar again. Wind pushed it back and forth with a tired groan, as though the tower had exhaled its last story and wanted no more. Inside, the stairwell lights flickered softly, then blinked out entirely. Lena felt a weight settle on her chest, a strange mix of grief and completion. Her father had died trying to expose Fairway. The whistleblower had survived hell to protect the evidence. A nameless man had given his life in the vault for her, and now everything they fought for was finally in the world above. She walked toward the center of the runway, her boots kicking up dust, the cool morning wind biting gently at her cheeks. The sky brightened slowly as the sun pushed higher, painting the airport in quiet gold. Behind her, the whistleblower stood and watched her with tired eyes. "What now?" he asked. Lena didn't turn. Her hand drifted into her jacket. She pulled out the triangular key, still warm, still pulsing faintly, as if echoing the last heartbeat of the facility it once commanded. She gazed at it for a long time, so small, so simple, yet it had changed everything, changed her life, changed the truth, changed the world above without anyone yet understanding why. The wind rustled the tall grass by the broken fence line. Lena closed her fist around the key. "Now," she whispered, her voice steady, calm, certain, "we rebuild." The whistleblower stepped beside her, watching the horizon. "This place will draw a lot of attention," he murmured. "Federal investigations, media, agencies scrambling to survive. It won't be quiet here for a long time." Lena nodded slowly. "It doesn't need to be quiet," she said. "It just needs to be honest." A faint smile touched the corner of his mouth. "And you?" he asked. "What will you do with the airport?" Lena looked across the cracked runway, once stained with lies, now washed clean by truth. "I'll make it into something good," she whispered. "Something that gives back instead of taking. Something my father would have been proud of." Her gaze lifted to the sky. For the first time since she'd stepped onto this land, she felt the sky looking back. No secrets, no warnings, just possibility. The whistleblower exhaled, calm settling over his features. Then Fairway finally became what it should have been, he said, a flight towards something better. Lena closed her eyes. The wind brushed her shoulders gently, like a hand, like her father saying goodbye. And as the sun rose over the forgotten airport she'd bought for $800, Lena Harwood stood on the cracked runway, no longer running from truth, but ready to build the world that came after it. The sun climbed higher, warming the cracked tarmac, as if trying to erase the cold that had lived beneath it for decades. Lena stood quietly, feeling the first rays touch her face, soft, gentle, nothing like the harsh fluorescent glow of the underground vault. This warmth wasn't a warning. It wasn't a secret. It was a beginning. She breathed it in, slow and steady. The whistleblower lingered a few paces behind, his hands braced on his knees as he steadied himself from the climb. 34 years in hiding had carved him into something wiry and resilient, but even he seemed surprised to be standing beneath open sky again. The wind tugged at his jacket, lifting dust from the runway in small spirals that twisted like ghosts taking flight. A distant siren wailed on the county road, not urgent, just the soft cry of a patrol car responding to the chaos sensed miles away. Soon, real authorities would arrive, media vans, investigators, and perhaps, if justice moved the way the evidence demanded, arrests. The world above had awakened, and it would come here first. But for now, there was only quiet. Lena walked toward the abandoned hangar, her boots crunching across gravel. The corrugated metal walls reflected sunrise in fractured gold. Inside, she found long, forgotten pieces of the airport's past, rusted fuel drums, dusty tool chests, a collapsed wooden ladder, an oil-stained tarp that had once covered a small aircraft engine. She touched the engine gently. So many pieces of this place had been left to rot because the truth beneath it was too dangerous to reveal. Now that truth was free, she turned back toward the whistleblower. "Will you be safe?" she asked. He nodded faintly, though his eyes carried the weight of a life lived on the run. "I think so," he said, "for the first time in a long time. I think I can stop hiding. Everything they did is public now. I'm no longer their secret to burn." Lena studied him. "You can stay here," she offered softly, "at least until things settle." He smiled, a slow, weary, grateful smile. "You're kind, Lena, just like your father." A pause. "But I've lived too long in the shadows. I need to go to the people who can use my testimony. I need to finish what I started." Lena nodded, swallowing the ache tightening her chest. "Then don't disappear again," she whispered, not like he did. He pressed a hand to her shoulder, warm, steady, a gesture of promise. "I won't," he murmured. They stepped out of the hangar together just as a gust of wind swept across the runway, rippling through the grass like a tide. Far overhead, the cry of a lone hawk echoed, a sound sharp and wild and free. Lena watched it circle above the control tower, the same tower that had once hidden more truth than she could grasp. Now the windows of that tower glinted with sunlight, normal, unthreatening, simply part of the sky again. The whistleblower turned toward the cracked access road. "You should prepare yourself," he said. "Agents, reporters, lawyers. They'll crawl over every inch of this place. They'll ask you questions until your voice breaks." Lena let out a slow breath. "I know," she said. "And what will you tell them?" he asked. She looked out across the land she now owned, the rusted hangars, the silent tower, the remnants of a secret that had nearly killed her. But beneath it all, she felt something new blooming. Purpose. "I'll tell them the truth," she said simply. For the first time in this airport's history, the whistleblower murmured, "That will be enough." He stepped onto the road, hitching the torn strap of his jacket over his shoulder. Lena watched him for a long moment, this man who had carried a secret for so long it nearly consumed him. The world would soon know his story, her father's story, the story of everyone who died trying to expose Fairway. She let him go with a nod. As he walked away, a soft breeze gathered across the runway. It carried dust, heat, and something faint, like the lingering presence of all who once fought to reveal the truth buried below. Lena turned back toward the airport. There was much to do. She walked toward the terminal building, the front steps cracked but still standing. The glass doors were dusty, their once automatic frames frozen in place. She pushed them open. Inside, light spilled over empty check-in counters and forgotten seating rows. This space could live again, a community aviation center, flight lessons for local kids, a memorial to her father and everyone who never made it home. A place for healing to take root where corruption once lived. She placed her hand on the railing of the old waiting lounge. This airport would take flight again, but this time honestly, openly, and with purpose. The sun shifted, casting warm gold through the dusty windows. It illuminated Lena's reflection faintly, older in spirit now, but stronger too. Outside, she heard the distant rumble of engines, cars approaching on the long access road. Authorities would be here soon. Lena stepped out onto the runway again. The air was bright, the sky open. The weight of the underground world finally lifted from her shoulders. For the first time since this began, she felt light. The wind tugged at her hair as she looked down the length of the runway, its cracked, sun-baked surface stretching into the horizon. Where secrets once lived, possibility now bloomed. And as she took a slow breath, steady and full, Lena Harwood realized something with quiet certainty. Her father's fight was over, her own was just beginning, and the forgotten airport she bought for $800 was finally ready to rise.